Okay, yeah, ready?
Cannot see your screen. Yeah, that's why I said I'm getting started whenever he says he's ready. So, I'm gonna start sharing the screen right now. Everybody should be seeing the screen. Yeah. Good. We discussed, I'm gonna do very quick so far what we discussed and what we in the past we went through leading practice does generally, it breaks things down in meta objects. It has documented these meta objects in terms of their description, state, behavior. So that we have the class stereotypes and subtypes for those. And we have classifications and categorizations of these different areas. I would like now to show some of these examples with it. So let's take right now, I'm gonna go over here to my folder. Within here we actually gonna see this is literally a project we did together.
There's a lot of background noise, a lot of noise, shuffling paper or something, or moving house.
Yeah, somebody is making a lot of noise.
Yeah. Ah, now it's stopped. Now it's stopped.
Yes, now it's very nice, and if nothing else, it can be put on mute for somebody if they need to shuffle.
Yeah.
So this view, most of you should have been able to see before. This is basic data. 87 identified objects. We have. What we do with them is we typically have sorted them by their sublayers. So these objects, these 18 objects you are seeing, are sorted by the value layer. This is also referred to as purpose and goal. These here are sorted according to the competency, these the service, these the process, these the applications, these data, these platform, these infrastructure. Please note that you might say here to 40, yeah, but there is more than a process, because there's a process area, there's process groups, there's also activities, and there's also steps. These are categorizations of the process, because I can order them by also, and I can do it by assemble by order, to literally do from top to bottom. That would be classifications. Here in these here are not classifications. Why? Because there is no need to do the duplications. That in this case, that is a categorization or classification of a process. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we write down process, that's the meta object. And meta obviously meaning, meta means information about, meaning this is therefore the process symbolizes, in this case, the information about the process. It represents everything around that is within the process. Now, please note, these are the lead 5. I'm already showing you they are not released to the market. We will be doing that in summer. We are just updating all. These represents the lead 5 symbols. Version 5. In this case, the following are updated. Services updated. Processes updated. So is application task and application service. Now you might say, why have you updated those? Because OMG in their standard for the process has an application task, meaning a process task. They just have the symbol of a hand. So we decided of saying, and any process in BPMN model always has the hand shown. An automated, however, always has the wheel, the working wheel.
Yeah.
So in this case, an automated task is obviously an application task. So we translated it so that now that we go over to E+, that we can literally do exactly the same thing. An automated service has two wheels, working wheels, while a normal service has two hands. So it's just to make compliant as OMG is updating their different standards, VDML, rules modeling. We might update very small ones just to make sure that we are always 100% compliant to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is it because you're on the board you get that information in regards to their updating sooner than anybody else?
Yeah, and we also follow it. We are both on OMG. This is why we have a partnership. And the reasons we are very interested to do that, we want E+, and the modeling. I mean, you have to remember that all these objects with their symbols and signs are used within our modeling, our engineering, and architecture. In this case, if there is done architecture work, it is immediately compliant to any software standard that exists from OMG, and therefore from IBM, Accenture, or anything else. That's the most important reasons for it. So, any questions to this so far? So I believe you should have been able to see this. So, no, we then move on from here. Now, I'm closing this. I'm going to go back to our presentation where we were. Because what we just discussed right now is that the meta objects have a very specific object. They have with it descriptors. These descriptors I have also shown before. They would be looking like, I'm going to go back here to the artifact description. I'm going to open them up. And here you would see the individual objects. They have the notations that you saw before. Here they have the same number that you saw before. So it's a similar view, but what is added to it is the descriptors. So we have a meta object, we have a notation, meaning an icon or a symbol for it. Then we have a specific number, we have a sub-layer that it relates to, and an enterprise layer it relates to, and then a specific description. Can anybody of you that we are just saving for the time say, why is a description so important?
I'm in a meeting, Sarah.
Subject, you are actually the guru in this. Could you maybe enlighten us, or for the others, just to that we quickly, why are the descriptors so important once you have identified an object?
Right, so I thought it was a question just to sort of test knowledge. But yeah, that's fine. I mean, essentially, it provides. We're trying to model these in a formal way, so we're trying to disambiguate the meaning. So it's all to do with semantics. Yeah. So I give it a description. We try to disambiguate its use. Yeah.
Get out. Get out. You don't need to go up here. Get downstairs. Close the door. Close the door.
Anything that inherits from it, a stereotype, types and subtypes will exhibit the exact same behavior, and that's following Liskov substitutability principle. Yeah.
Exactly.
So obviously, we want to make sure that we carefully define what the meta objects are, because anything that inherits from the meta object will share exactly that same description and specialize it according to specific use. So we have to get these properly and formally described.
Exactly. So, if we are considering, for us, this might not be a big thing, because this is our business. We are in the business of doing such a thing. For the companies, that's a major thing. Many times they have multiple different descriptions for control or report or monitoring or risk or a plan. They are each one describes it differently so much that it starts to add to the level of confusion. As a matter of fact, we have one of the master students doing his work of using this very basic thing with the descriptors as the basic of a shared structure within the organization. And we are talking about one of the top 500 companies in the world that is using this to say, we are therefore using this to standardize our terms and terminologies. So in this case, this can be used not only to standardize, we are using it within leading practice to standardize our work, to standardize the reference content, and to make sure everybody uses the same descriptor. For example, in OMG, there are 5 different ways of how to solve the process. There are 5 different notations, there are 5 different meaning symbols, and they have various descriptors for it, and they also have different semantic relationships for it, making it very, very difficult to standardize. For example, BPMN has one set of notation and descriptors for a task, a process, while VDML, the value delivery modeling language, has a different one for activity, meaning a process task. And DMN has a third one, and the business architecture has a 4th one, etc., etc. So we can move on and then actually say, well, does that in reality hurt? Well, it doesn't hurt the individual software tool, but as more software tools the company implements from OMG, as more distributed and disharmony their standard is. So, in that case, it's quite important. Can somebody push the mute button for those who have the telephone in the background? Thank you. So, let's proceed. We also discussed that to the meta objects, we find them in the maps, matrix, and models. Now, let me very shortly jump into the example of doing this, because we did not have the chance to do this, because we would say that we would do it in the future. I'm going to open up right now a PDF. I know you will not be able to see all. That's because on the very, very left here, I'm going to zoom in. On the very left, you see here all the different objects that we had before. So we can have a process, we can have event, we have gateways, process rules. It's exactly the same 87 different objects we have. Now on top of it, you will see the most identified artifacts that we saw in the market. Like, I'm going to zoom in a little bit that you see it a little bit better. We have forces and drivers, we have vision, mission artifact, we have goal artifact, we have a requirement artifact. We also have a business model, or measurement, or report, or balance scorecard, or planning, or role model, or workflow model. So, or security, or risk, or you can go to the very, very bottom here, then it goes to more to platform distribution model, infrastructure, virtualization models, high availability models. So obviously you will be also recognizing that it's going from the top to the bottom. It follows a little bit the layered thinking. Within there, you would see here the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Is there anyone of you who have worked with it who actually might enlighten the others who don't know it? What does a 1 stand for?
Map.
Exactly. So 1 is a map. A map is a list of things. It's therefore, like it says, it's a mapping of it. I'm listing it. It doesn't have an interface to anything. So a process map would just be a list of my processes. So let's go down here. I'm taking, let's say, it's just to keep it on the top, I'm taking quality, and I want to relate quality to my process artifact. How do I do that? Therefore, I'm looking at 11, and I am following over here, and I would be seeing it relates to requirements, stakeholders in a matrix. Therefore, in a matrix, now what's a matrix?
Matrix is an artifact that displays how the objects, and in this case the artifacts, relate to each other. So you typically
So in this case you have one known factor or two known factors that you relate together to before an unknown component. Because when the two relate together, they give something new. It's like this. This is the matrix.
Yeah.
I'm relating quality to different components, and I'm telling how they relate. In this case, I am saying that quality. I need a matrix before I can relate requirements to quality, and that makes sense because then requirement is one set of objects, and a risk is another set of objects, or quality is another set of objects. I need to have a matrix in order to put requirements to quality. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And I can also put the stakeholders to saying which stakeholder has what quality wishes. I could also relate it to value aspects, or performance, or measurements reporting, etc., etc., etc. Therefore, this provides an overview of different components of how things relate. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it doesn't relate to the process. What was you saying in the first place? The process something. You were just.
Yeah. So you could go through here and relate it to multiple components. You could also say, if I want to relate my quality right now, then to various components, and let's say here quality is not related to a workflow, I would then see how could I relate it through other components to it. So it's just to give the short idea at the moment in order to proceed back. So therefore, we see meta objects, we find them in the maps, matrix, and models. And this is what leading practice also has standardized of how to do across multiple components. But let's say artifacts, because these are artifacts here. Let's say artifacts that leading practice has not identified. Let's say we are taking a totally new thing, like Northern Health actually did. And Northern Health knows quite a bit about the artifacts because we implemented the artifacts within their organization. As a matter of fact, we literally wrote an entire paper on standardizing and integrating artifacts with them on the subjects, published actually in Simon's journal. So in this case, what would happen if there's suddenly an artifact or there's a subject that leading practice does not have an artifact about? So we have identified the most common that we see in the market, but let's say you have a totally new subject, like robotics automation, and suddenly you want to automate a function. And it used to be that you only did robotic automations with a process, but now they want to automate a function or a service. How do I go about that?
Well,
right?
Yeah, I'm going to say, firstly, whatever concept you're dealing with from a high level, a meta-object level, it should fit within the 87. So, once you've identified what object you're dealing with in order to create the artifact, then you're just literally gonna create the, types, subtypes, of whatever concept you're dealing with, and then you'll be able to kind of plug things into the framework to generate an artifact that's desired.
Yes. So let's say I would identify an area that absolutely does not relate to the 87 objects, and that could happen. Let's say you have a sub industry. Let's say, Jamie, you are writing your PhD on education.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, you are doing an education ontology. And you are at the moment, if I remember right, you are actually trying to do a course curriculum, right?
Yes, so that's right.
And if I remember right, you have actually used the leading practice principles of the meta objects and the artifacts principles for that. Could you share some of that idea?
Yeah.
How did you do it? Because I mean, this is not an artifact that leading practice has. But
Yeah.
you took the very idea. How did you go about it?
Yeah, basically, as part of a course leader role, you know, we're shaping curriculum for the courses with the direction that university is going in regards to being an applied university. So what I wanted to do is, putting this very briefly, because we're an applied university, I had to think about some important foundational concepts in relation to the curriculum. One of those being careers. We have to have courses that lead to certain career outcomes. Within a course, we need to have clear identifiable strands. A course has to have identifiable strands. And within those strands, we've got content areas. So I wanted to be able to literally relate those three things together. So the only way I could do that is by creating a matrix. So what I did was I had, like, down the left hand side, I had my core strands, which in my case is business, IT, and business and IT integration. And then I've got the actual career outcomes. So literally got all the careers related to those three strands. Then on the top, going across the right, left to the right, I've got all the content areas. And then what I've been able to do is just literally...
Would you mind, Jamie, actually very, very short sharing that?
Okay, one moment.
Because what he has done, if I could be now stating here, what he did, he looked at it, he did it also by meta objects, even though he did not describe it as meta objects, but he took it and said, these courses exist. Then he looked at what kind of classification and categorizations could I have by the courses, by the other subjects in terms of strengths, and now how do they relate? In this case, you can add an X. Does everybody see the presentation here? I just went the next step. One could add an X and saying, these two relate this way. Like we did before. I had over here. Now I have here a number. But I could also have made an X just saying this force and that goal, they relate.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me know you're ready and I can share my screen.
Yep. So we are giving over, if this is okay, just for our purpose of understanding the idea and the modeling discipline. I'm going to stop sharing the screen here, and I'm going to hand over to Jamie. If you share with us where you applied exactly the same principle we're discussing now to a totally different area.
Okay, can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to show you two stages that I've gone through with this. This is the first stage, whereby, as I mentioned before, I've got the, if you like, the core strands, which you could say are, you know, the meta objects. Also got career strands that have different careers in relation to business, different careers in relation to business and IT integration, and then the IT strand, which has all the IT related careers, yeah? Then across the top, this is where I've got the content areas, which obviously these are the business ones. These touch the business course strand. Then going across, you will see how the others relate to the different strands. So I've done this for the strands, for the careers. So what I now know is that, for example, the business environment content area, it touches this part of the course strand, it touches this career, that career, it touches quite a lot of different career outcomes. So I know that, okay, that content area is really important. You get the idea with this one. And then I moved it on to a bit more understanding and complexity, because now I'm saying, okay, if I just draw your attention to the content area key at the top here, what I'm saying here is that anywhere where I've shaded in this color of green, I'm saying I already have this content area on level 5 and level 6, which actually I don't have that anywhere. Anywhere I've shaded this shade of green, I have it on either level 5 or level 6, which means that it needs to be developed in one of those missing areas, because what the idea with this is that I'm looking to create work packages within my course team. Anywhere where I've shaded 19 to 20 in this blue means that I'm looking to develop this for the academic year 1920. Yeah? So it helps to establish areas where we need to actually focus on as a course team in terms of the content. So I did create some additional models from this in relation to the specific strands, but I won't go into that because that's kind of going away from, I think, the purpose of what we're discussing. But hopefully you can see the idea of how I've used the reference content to create a matrix in relation to course curriculum.
Very nice cross table.
Yeah, Jamie, can I just say something? First of all, well done. It looks very nice. But in terms of your career on your left-hand side,
yes,
you might want to look at, in UK we have what we call the SIC standards for the careers.
The what standard? Sorry.
The SIC, S-I-C.
Okay. Yes.
Now, at the moment in UK, we are standardizing career by 4-digit code.
Okay.
So if you look at SIC codes, you will get them, and you want to cross-reference with your career.
Wonderful.
Because if you want to then take this as a sort of like a generalized standard, they're going to ask you where did you get your references in terms of your career coming from.
Yeah, which obviously I've done by some research on prospects and on other sites as well, but that's very useful, yeah. Ardivan, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, shall I hand back over to you now, Mark? Or?
Yes, I think that was very good. So if we go back to where we were at the presentation, share screen again. Thank you very much, Jamie. So what we had is basic, that to show how the meta objects can always be found in mapped matrix models. Obviously, that's also not a new concept, but the fact that leading practice has standardized this and has identified the most common artifacts that are out in the market and actually says, how do you go about it? So I'm going to go here to the artifact right now. I hope everybody sees the screen. I'm going to enable the macros. You saw it took long for it to open. So you already saw the maps matrix models. Now I'm going to show just a very basic, the most common forces and drivers. So when you identify, if you would have a map, these are the things you can map together. Meaning you give the force a name, you have an external driver, an internal driver, an external force, or an internal force, and you can actually say what's the risk to that. while you say, aren't that part of a little bit of a matrix? Well, in a way, yes, but this is found in maps. We see that organizations actually say that organizational area has that force or that driver. Please remember that right now we just said this is what we typically find within it. You obviously see on top here the reference to the Sackman interoperatives. Obviously, this was done because many years Sackman played an active role in the board. In the meantime, he has become too old. Some of you still met him at the last conference we had before in Canada. Yeah. I think, if I remember, who was it who met him?
Hans, I met him. And I met him too.
Yeah. So he was still then there and presented. And we presented together how we actually had merged everything that it has a link towards it. So that's just for those who are new to the things, that they kind of see a little bit the historic. I know Hans and you, Simon, you will know this anyway. Here's typically how we work with the artifacts. Let's say you come, and by the way, in the bottom here you will find always descriptions to the artifact. There's a descriptions to it, and then the usage. It says, and then it actually says how you can do it. What's a big thing to an artifact? I'm going to zoom a little bit out, and then I'm actually going to show you how we work with this artifact. So here's what you do. When you come to an organization, and they say, well, we want to map the external forces to our organizational areas, an organizational unit. I said, okay, do you want to map it to your processes or services or identify the risk to it? No, not at the moment. I said, very good. Then I do like this. I take my forces. I said, these are the organizational areas, and this is my organizational unit. And I said, voila. Therefore, this was the what.
Yeah.
And this was the where. And in this case, you will see one could also just write forces here, but the reasons we do the external and internal, that is just a categorization. This could also be one category. And voila, this is a map that can be used. So these maps are just the most common identified artifacts, and then we have put all of it together. For each of the customers we work with, we obviously use and tailor the artifact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've got a question when you're ready to take it.
Go ahead.
Right. When you're working with customers or you're working with certain stakeholders, so let's say, for example, you plan to work with stakeholders that work in the technology layer of the enterprise. Would I be using the so I forgot the label of the artifact that has all the objects and the 1, 2, 3 identification of the map, the matrix, and the models. What's the name of the artifact again?
Yeah, so we just have here. I'm just gonna go here, where you have the map, matrix, models. This overview. Yes. So which would you like to see?
Yeah. So it's not this one. It's the one that has the matrix and the numbers in. So what? Yeah, there you go. So let's say I'm wanting to work with somebody in the technology layer to populate. Well, first of all, let's say you create all the stereotypes, types within a certain objects, but then you want to create artifacts to help to get some structure and framework to the way they work and to plug into the overall architecture of the enterprise. Would I be using this as a guide in order to work with them to create certain artifacts?
Yes. So if you actually, in any of the subjects, let's say you are saying here the technology layer, and you would like to have alignment of the technology layer to, in this case, you were discussing the business components.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you see requirements can be related to all of these technology components at the bottom.
Uh-huh.
So this here. So I'm just going to highlight it. This is, by the way, typically how I work. So I can add requirements to the platform, to the infrastructure components, and then I could be relating these to the individual artifacts. As a matter of fact, you see I can relate it to my role artifact with platform devices, saying which requirements relate to a platform device, to roles, owners, security aspects. I can add rules to it, various services, application services, platform components, data components. So from there, you can go from one artifact to the other.
Right.
Would it be okay that I actually show it?
Yeah, please.
So I'm gonna go here right now. You will see on the bottom that it will change a little bit. You will see here that we have various requirements matrices. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit from the requirement matrix, because this is the one, this is requirement matrix 34. So I know this is actually the one with the detailed requirements, where you would see here, and I'm going to zoom in that you see a little bit. So this is the what in this case. In this case, this is about the control aspects. I could also use the monitoring aspects, or the application system, or the infrastructure. And that's exactly so. Let's say you wanted to have the infrastructure, the technology component, which is the one you mentioned.
Yeah.
So I want to have a relationship of infrastructure functions. I now relate my requirements. I'm zooming in a little bit. I'm relating my requirements to my infrastructure functions. In this case, I can identify the who's the owners. I can specify the what, the high-level requirements, the detailed requirements. I can also specify if I have value or performance expectations. You know, this is very interesting. Typically, executives know the difference of this. Technology people, not so much, but an executive, they say, a technology person says, oh yeah, we could be doing this, and literally the executive says, I don't care about those requirements to it. I want that. So he has either a value or performance expectations.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. So, is this...
He doesn't want to do a lot of requirements.
Yeah.
He just has an expectation.
Is that linking it back to the purpose and goal layer?
Exactly. As a matter of fact, it can also be translated to high-level requirements and detailed requirements. This is why it's within a map. Then, in this case, this is a matrix. Obviously, because you see here and there, and also states down there matrix. Then you can attach it to plans. Are there any plans that could be projects or business plans or any plan component? You can relate it to enterprise capabilities, to contracts, to products, to services or processes, and the specific application modules, the features, the functions of them, and different platforms, different data components, etc., etc. So you see here, this matrix has been created very specifically. Now you might say, but Mark, I can never fill all of this out. Again, it comes back to what we stated in the start. Yep. Let's say you are saying you start very early, like the discussions we had. You said, no, all I need are the owners, meaning the stakeholders. This is what I'm going back to Jamie's example. I want the high-level requirements. They not come with detailed requirement in the start. That's going to be later. I'm not going to delete it. I'm just going to take it away from the view. I'm going to make it small. You see here. Then I said, very good. I want the value and performance expectations. I don't have a link to plan. I don't have a link to my capabilities or to the products. I don't have a link to the service or process. But I do need a link to my applications. And that's what I wished to do. So I'm deleting all the others. Obviously, you can also have linked to reports or resources or actors or specific roles within it. So voila, I have a basic matrix that right now I could be using. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Last question. When you're aiming...
And just a second before you come to it, here's what I then have. I have, and here in the dark blue is always the interoperative specifications. I have the one what related to another what. But within that, I have the who and the where.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, we use these interoperatives. They are very, very powerful. We are using the interoperatives literally to test, to see how complete the models are. In that sense, Sackman has really, really created something useful to the market with the interoperatives.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to go back to show here. The interoperatives, we are using these 8, meaning that we are saying with the what, I have a context. With the where, I have, for example, the location, place, or area. With the who, I have the personal, the actor. But I'm still missing here the whence, the source. I'm still missing the why, the reasons in that map that I just did. So it's a very, very good way of testing it and then also telling you, but what am I missing in that matrix? And within the matrix, what we have done is we have just mapped all of the possible combinations that we have seen, or the most common possible combinations that we have seen in the market. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's great. It's great. my question was going to be, let's say you plan to develop a comprehensive architecture for the enterprise. Is it best to start with the purpose and goal layer and work your way down? Is there any best place to start, or from your experience?
Now you are asking something. So if you are talking about architecture, this is where Lead uses a very unique agile approach, because it does so based on I'm going to go back to this presentation if this is okay to answer the question. Because it does so, the meta object has a specific modeling procedures and modeling technique. This is where we do something unique that is absolutely agile. So we do not like the TOGAF meta wheel method. Why? Well, basically, it's a waterfall approach. It's totally out of date. Also, ASAP, also multiple of the other concepts, they are totally out of date. A waterfall approach, and you have to look at multiple components, and that's what your question is, Jamie. You are saying, can I be using this? What do I start with? And where do I end?
Yeah.
You can start, because each object has a modeling procedure attached to it and a modeling technique with steps and results. Therefore, you can start at any component. You do not need to start at the business layer. As a matter of fact, we are recommending many times not to do so. Let's say you have a problem with your data service and your data object, then you want to start on modeling just the data objects and the data service. It might not even have a connection to the business layer. Within that, what helps you? The notations that exist, the syntax that exists, and the semantics that exists within and that have been identified. So what you jump in directly with the object, and now you can model it, use the right artifacts, fix the problem, or do the modeling needed, the architecture needed, and voila.
And I suppose if you then want to connect things to the business layer, then you got the opportunity to do so.
You always have the ability. As a matter of fact, you have the ability to see how does this meta object, doesn't matter if you take a data object, if you're saying how does it relate up, you could be checking how it relates. You do not need a complex modeling technique to do that. It's quite simplistic. There's multiple ways of how to do that. You can either do it through the artifact overview up here, or you could be doing it through the meta models that exist.
Yeah.
Because we have the semantic mapping and the semantic scheme within it.
Yeah.
So let me show there an example if this is okay with everybody else. Is everybody still d'accord and up to date with the things where we are?
Yeah, no problem.
Mark, I have got classes in 20 minutes.
Yes, and it seems that this could be going on forever, and it can, but we will be finished within that time. So let's jump directly to the aspects of now from a different perspective, through a meta model for it. For that, I'm going to choose the subject of strategy, if this is okay with everybody, just that we have different components here.
Yeah. Mark, may I ask a general question? So you want to skip my presentation to our next meeting?
Yes, I think so we are doing, because the last meeting we were supposed to have jumped out, and now, so we kind of rolled one back. We are we are one presentation back, and we scheduled you for the grand finale of seeing how do things fit together, how could you model it. So that moves, yes, that moved. Sorry, I should have, when we moved the things, I thought that would automatically be thinking within it.
Okay, yeah, good to know. But you received my presentation yesterday, okay, and you liked it, and you want to give it to the audience, and
yes, definitely. We need to have it, and that's the next time we will have the parts of how you can do the modeling and keep it from a GPS perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So having 15 minutes left, let's take it.
Yeah, even 20.
So let's take this from the meta model right now, the perspective. I'm going to open up a simple meta model here. Does everybody see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Good. Now, this simple meta model, it's nothing special. It's, as a matter of fact, it just says how do things relate. So it says that the forces, external and internal, are connected to aspects of a strategy. As you already see, it says on top here, strategy meta model. So this is on the subject of strategy. This is not on the subject, even though it includes a business process, it is not on the subject of business processes or services or roles or any other, where we also have meta models. So in this case, this is a meta model specific for strategy. Therefore, it has the perspective of the strategy related components. So it tells me what a strategy can relate to and can't relate to. So we see here a strategy, in this case I see strategy here, is made up of the categorizations, and this is therefore an unequal level of decomposition. I haven't decomposed forces into the various ways that forces are, or drivers, or goals, or reports, or processes, but I have decomposed strategy in its versions. That's why there is a box around strategy here, and then it does the specifics of it, because the enterprise strategy relates to the organization, while the organizational area strategies relate to organizational areas, and organizational group strategies relate to organizational groups, which consist within the enterprise. It is within the organization that I now find aspects of other components. For example, I find roles within my organizational groups that have organizational functions that execute them. These organizational functions are also measured. They are measured against objectives. These objectives realize the goals, and the goals actually realize part or full components of the strategy. Does that make sense?
Yep.
The measures are recorded by the reports, and the reports actually report back to the organizational strategy in terms of where am I of the KPIs, in terms of, and the KPI can measure both the organizational functions, the services, the processes, And this is also the relationship to strategy. So if I would want to relate strategy to a process, there is no semantic relationship between organizational strategy and processes. It is more what is called indirect relationships. Does this make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Good.
Sure. Yeah.
So such a meta model can be used just to document which relationships exist and which don't exist. And how would it be done? Actually, here you can see the legend in the bottom. There is a meta object name. It has a relationship, and there is the semantic relationship defined within it. Now, let's go a little bit. What else could I be using? I could be adding here the notations to it. Did everybody see what I just did? I'm going to go back.
Yeah, you can
Here's
see it.
without the notations. And here is with the notations.
Yeah.
So in this case, I actually know that an object has a specific icon, symbol. In that case, in the modeling world, it's called notation. Now, these notations I could be used to model, because now I have I have two relationships to my artifacts. I have the relationship through the meta object, but I also have the relationship through the notation. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I could be now saying two things. I could first of all say which layer are the different meta objects within. So you start to see the layer here on the left side.
Yep.
That's now the enterprise sublayers. But I could also start saying which artifact, watch out, that became a bit more. I'm going to zoom in. Which artifact does it relate to? So you are seeing here on the bottom artifacts. So you would be seeing here the business service is found in the artifact DEHI. D is a value model. That makes sense that I find the business service in the value model because the service actually delivers the value. So that makes sense. I also find it in the performance model. Yeah, that makes sense because I also improve the performance on the services. I also find it in a revenue model. Yeah, that makes sense because my revenue is directly attached to a service. I find it in a service model. Yeah, very good. But I could also find services in a process model, or in an operating model, or a cost model. So you can actually see what kind of modeling disciplines are found within the concepts. Does that make sense?
Mark, may I ask a question concerning the icons? You introduced us to the OMG working wheels and hands. Shouldn't they also be related here?
If you remember, what did I say when I showed it to you? That I said this is not released to the market yet.
Oh, yeah.
This is, so I said I will show you right now something that we will be publishing. That's Lead 5.0. At the moment we are at Lead 4.0. This is a meta model that is released. Hence you will be seeing the 4 that we updated, where actually the business process, also the role.
Yeah, I like this idea very much to consolidate them.
Exactly, but that is at the moment going on, and that's obviously updating all of its material and then releasing it out. So that's an internal job that is happening at the moment. And that we are doing normally not by external forces, but for the aspects of, since we are going through what's E+ and software, we are right now complying to software standards. Anyway, so does this make sense to everybody that I could be also using a meta model to choose which object I want to start with, and then I could go directly from there to an artifact?
Yeah, perfect.
Agile.
Yes, it's an absolutely agile way. You can either start with an artifact directly, and that's, by the way, most of our community members. They have a problem and they just ask for the artifact, or they have the artifacts and then they just use them. So it's in that way, it is highly simplistic. While the science behind it is a little bit more complex, the users out there, the organizations, they don't care of the medicines, what's in an aspirin. They just want to know, here's an aspirin, how do I take it? Is it from the top or is it from the, you guys get my point? And how fast does it work and how effective is it? That's all they want. They don't want to know the details necessarily of how we are creating the aspirin and the whole manufacturing process and everything else. That is more for the discussions of us. Why? Because you need to know what's under the hood. How are we doing it? What's creating it? How is it working? So that was the idea of today. There is one last aspect I would like to add, but that was the main idea of today. So far, are there any questions?
Not from me.
Just one question from me, Mark. Who is developing your software, your EE Plus software, at the moment?
That's programmers.
No, I'm saying, where do they sit? Are they sitting with you at the moment?
Yes, so they are sitting actually all over the world. We have some in India, some in Russia, and some in Hungary. The last 3 years, the most programming came from Hungary, from the team. So they were external members, but we also have hired that leading practice, full payroll. But they sit in Russia.
So at some point, maybe we should have a call, because I have some ideas on your software development.
That's very good.
That's on later stage.
That should be a talk with Simon and myself, because Simon is actually the chief architect of the software tool.
Excellent.
Yeah,
so
no problem. Good idea.
That should lead us, and we had the same calls in this case then on the software tool, but then on the development. But that we need to take off for those who are interested to say, I want to participate also in the development. Every one of you can participate. You are on the GUA board and on leading practice. If you want to participate on the development and have an active part to it, more or less it could also be just saying, I want to be on the copies of the emails and I want to see what's happening and I want to give whenever I have an input, I want to give my 5 cents. That's absolutely okay.
Because the reason I'm saying I've seen a software be developed in joint collaboration between OMG and US air defense sector on putting all the UML and SysML stuff for the US Air Force. I can send you references to the part. I can see what they haven't done is what you've done over here, which can add value to what they're trying to do. So,
as a matter of fact, we have done something else based on that project you are referring to. You have to remember that I'm an OMG chairman. We already integrated UML into E+. We have a full UML modeling environment, and we have a full ESKIMNet modeling environment.
Good. So let's pick this offline between me and you and Simon.
Problems that at the moment the market is looking at, how in the world are they doing it? How could they go about it?
Yeah.
And as you saw, Adam, and very fact, we actually used engineering principles for this. What we have over here is these, with the certain parts of these components, are equally an engineering approach.
Yes, it is.
Last part, and then we are finished. It's because we are busy. Can please everybody see here what we did in addition? You have a number on top of here. You have 6 on the force. This refers to the bottom on the strategy life cycle. We have a life cycle concept developed for all of it, which is very, very unique to leading practice. Besides leading practice, there exists no other strategy life cycle. As a matter of fact, Jamie found this so interesting, he just wrote a paper on this very subject. On this very subject, the strategy life cycle, where this was taken, all of this, because let's say here, the force plays when a role, 1, 2, 6, it plays a role in strategy lifecycle, in the strategy analysis and the strategy understanding, in the strategic options, as well as my continuous strategy improvement. That's where the force plays a role. It doesn't play a role in the other components. So, having had that, therefore, one could also create, I'm going to jump out and actually show the strategy lifecycle. Is the strategy lifecycle overview, where you have strategy analysis, design and understanding, strategy options design, strategy development, strategy execution, strategy governance, and continuous strategy improvement with change management. Obviously, it also has a more detailed component. I'm going to open it up. Watch out, it's going to be a little bit more heavy. All of this now has the strategy lifecycle. It is exactly the same view we saw in the meta model, but without the semantic relations. We could add the semantic relations here, but the reasons we don't have it is because it confuses the companies, because they typically do it more ad hoc, meaning in an agile way. So here I can say, what do I do in the strategy analysis phase? I typically do these steps with these objects. What do I do with my strategic options and design? And which artifacts am I using? Here you see the artifacts. It's exactly the same components, but it's a different view. This is absolutely 100%. We took an engineering concept of a life cycle and applied it to the meta model and turned it around to a different view and created a whole new component in the market that doesn't exist so far, which actually Jamie took up and then said, "Ooh, me likey, I write a paper." He just it's not published yet, but you did just send it in, right?
Yes, it's been accepted. It's going to be published in Springer, so it's been accepted. We just need to make the minor corrections, and it will be good to go.
So Jamie was absolutely excited. As a matter of fact, one of the reviewers was so thrilled on the subject that he even wrote, "Wow, this should be tested. A meta model should be created in order to see the applicability to enterprises." And the funny thing is that this person doesn't know is that this already relates to the GUA ontology, which is already the meta model.
Yeah.
Anyway, so guys, this is it for today. I know it was a lot. But I hope it gave some insight and also to some of the depth that is there and the possibilities.
Yeah, beautiful. Very nice. Very nice presentation, Mark.
Next time, thank you, very kind. And next time we're going to go into how does this look in the enterprise engineering component and in the enterprise architecture. So we're going to take it away. Today we did a little bit more the modeling, and within that, we're going to touch on the Enterprise Navigator and the Enterprise GPS, which Hans will be sharing. We plan to do it today, but because we moved the entire sessions from last time, so we are one behind. So we look forward to that next time. Thank you very much, guys.
Great.
Okay, goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Take care, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.